everyone, and welcome back to the Mountain Queen world, where today I'm recording an episode of Uncut Ramblings, where we are going to be clearing out space for a new sugarcane farm. Originally, I was going to build said sugarcane farm up here on top of the base, which is why there's a little dirt staircase that I need to clean up. But then I changed my mind because I realized I really had no plan for it. I actually started that during an Uncut Ramblings episode. If you noticed, I got really confused at one point. Well, that's why. But we are going to tear this down because I've had a better idea. We are going to build this underground, and so I'm going to want a large space for that. I want to decorate it, make it look really cool, and while I'm not sure what that is going to look like, I know that right now we can start by clearing out the space for it. So that's what we're going to be doing today. And today, my topic of choice for rambling is the concept that we are living in a simulation. So I don't know if you've ever heard of this idea, but I really like it, and so today I really want to kind of dive into it and tell you my thoughts on the theory. So that is what we're going to be doing today. And I'm not sure where to start digging. Whoops, that is not what I intended to do. I suppose I could start digging up from here, but I think it's probably a better idea to start digging down. We want to use the sheathed digger, that way if we come across any silverfish, they won't bother us. So I think we should probably start from up here somewhere. Yes, there is, oh yes, there's a space down here. Oh no, that's bad, okay. That's very bad, yes, I'd forgotten about that. And now that's knocked out some torches. Well, that's okay. We will place the torch that was knocked out and get started. Oh, I'm going to need a shovel. Okay, well, first things first, grab a shovel. So, the theory that we are living in a simulation, my friends. That is what I am addressing today. And I want to start by talking about why I don't think the theory should scare people or bother them. A lot of people, when I start talking to them about it, say, I don't want to think about that. Like, it just seems unnerving, and I don't like it. I don't want to think about it. And I personally do not feel that way, and I want to explain why. So, first of all, other than, you may never have heard of this theory before, and there's a decent chance that you don't think it's very likely, right? Why is that? Because we don't really have any evidence for it, right? There's nothing to suggest that this is a simulation. Nothing widespread anyway. Nobody's really ever experienced any glitches as far as I'm aware of. You know, reality seems, or what we think is reality, seems pretty consistent. So it seems reasonable to assume that this is a real thing that we're experiencing, whatever this is. But the idea is that we might actually just be in some very smart computer that is doing a very good job at simulating our environment. Or, well, it's not necessarily a computer, that's just one of the theories, that's just one of the ideas that we have. Another theory is that we are, you know, maybe brains in a jar or some similar thing, so, you know, someone's wired you up with a whole bunch of electrodes and they're stimulating the nerves in your brain to make you feel like you're experiencing these things, but you're not really. That's another theory. So those are just a couple of the options for the idea that we're living in a simulation. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be any obvious evidence that we are living in a simulation. It just seems like a fairly implausible thing at least at first, right? But that's what I want to start with here, is that yes, it seems fairly implausible, but at the same time, that means that we have no real contact from the outside world, if you will. If there is a world outside the world we live in right now, a world that is controlling this simulation, or maybe not even in control of it, just a world that started the simulation in the first place, we don't seem to have access to that world or any sort of input from that world. If there is input, we cannot recognize it. So from that, I'm going to extrapolate that there isn't really anything we can do about the fact that we are living in a simulation if it is true. What I mean by that is even if we wanted to interact with the air quotes outside world, there would be no way to do so because we have no idea what the interface with the outside world might be, or how we might reach it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Because there is no apparent interference from the outside world, and therefore we have no way of interfering with it, right? Because we would have no idea how to do that. So that is one place I'm starting. I need to make a little staircase here. This seems reasonable. Alright, and downwards we shall dig. Gonna start digging around here. So that is my first principle. We have no way of interacting with the outside world that we know of. So if it's true that we are living in a simulation, there is nothing we can do about it other than there's nothing we can do that influences anything other than this world. We can go around spreading the word like, hey, there's a good chance we're living in a simulation right now, which I'm not saying there's a good chance, I'm just saying there's a chance. And we can talk to people about it, but there's really nothing we can do about the outside world. All we can affect is the inside of the simulation. So that doesn't really get us anywhere. And furthermore, it doesn't really change much if it's true that we are living in a simulation. I don't think that it changes much at all, because there's nothing we can do about it. So, because there's nothing we can do about the fact that we are living in a simulation, you might as well go on living your life. It won't make a difference to us whether or not we know that it's a simulation or not. Just because I think that we might be living in a simulation, which, honestly, I don't really bother thinking about it because I don't think it affects us. But even if I thought that we were living in a simulation, it wouldn't change how I experienced the simulation. This still all feels pretty darn real to me, and so I have no trouble... Oh, shoot. I think I got rid of my staircase. No, it's right here. Okay, good. I should probably replace the staircase with dirt or something so I can tell it's my staircase. Let's do that. So I don't really think about this idea all that much because it doesn't change much to me. It doesn't really bother me that we are living in a simulation, and I don't think it should bother you either, because there's not much we can do about it. I hope I have managed to make my point clear. We are helpless to change this fact if it is true, and we cannot... Okay, I've just gotten rid of that. Good. We are helpless to change this fact if it is true, and we doesn't really change how we experience life. And since we are kind of stuck living in this anyway, unless we die, there's no real way out of the simulation. I think that the best option is to continue going on, because again, there's nothing we can do to affect the outside world, so who really cares? And personally, I'm rather enjoying this life I lead, and I hope that you, wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, whatever your life may be like, I hope that you are too, to some extent. So, I think we can all agree that we like enjoying things, and therefore I think we can all agree that our best course of action, even if we are living in a simulation, because there's nothing we can do about the fact that we are living in a simulation, the best course of action would be to enjoy it. So that is what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to enjoy this, whether it is a simulation or whether it is real, and that is another reason why I don't think it should change much. So, we have gotten through why I don't think it's scary, I don't think there's anything inherently scary about it, because I don't think it changes much. That's why we've gone through, that's how we've gone through that. I'm sorry, having a little bit of trouble organizing my thoughts. Now, I want to go through some interesting consequences of the idea that we live in a simulation. So, my favorite consequence of the idea that we live in a simulation is the concept that because we might be living in a simulation, and let me quickly go over the might there. I think that it is plausible that we might be living in a simulation because if we were living in a really good simulation, we would have no way of knowing. And we are getting really good with computers. We have proven that there's a way of making computers that can simulate 3D environments in a pretty good way. We've all seen those really, really good, really well animated movies. We've seen Star Wars and such. We know that there are ways to simulate 3D space in that way. And obviously, those take a lot of power and simulation capacity, but in theory, it could be done. And who knows if there are beings simulating this, could be in some sort of higher dimension maybe, where I hope I didn't just ruin the cavern down below by doing that. Suppose I should probably go check, huh? Let's find out. Doesn't look like anything got ruined. That's good. Mushrooms are still intact. So, who knows if we are living in a simulation, whether the beings that are simulating it, or whatever, are in a higher sort of dimension. I don't know if dimension's the right word, but we don't necessarily need to assume that whatever is doing the simulation is the same sort of world that we are in. So, for example, we can currently do a pretty good job of simulating a 3D world with blocks, right? And simulating people going in and breaking those blocks, right? So, if we can simulate that, and it seems like a pretty primitive reality to us, right? Imagine some higher dimension where some higher being can simulate a world that seems pretty crude to it, but to anything living in that world seems pretty darn realistic. That's the concept we're talking about here. That is potentially what could be going on, and I think it makes sense, and I really like it as a concept. So that is why I am willing to indulge it, if you will, if you see what I mean. Honestly, I'm really just hoping that all of this makes sense to you. I hope that I am explaining it well enough and doing it justice. I don't know if I am, but I would like to think so. Can I dig out this far? Looks like I can with one block to spare. Good. Good, good, good. So, that is one thing. And another consequence of this is that you essentially know nothing. Or, I don't know if that's the first consequence. Sorry, I don't know if I've listed any other consequences. So the big consequence here is that you know nothing. Because we could be living in a situation and we know absolutely nothing about the outside world if we are living in a simulation, that means we know nothing whatsoever. If we are just brains in a jar being stimulated to feel like we're experiencing what we're experiencing, then this could be literally anything. Or what I mean is the outside world could be literally anything. The outside world could be a world in which 2 plus 2 equals 5, or 2 plus 2 equals 1,297,343. There's nothing theoretically wrong with that, because we know nothing about this outside world. We know nothing about really anything at all. So, we can't exactly trust what our senses are telling us. We can't exactly trust any knowledge we have, because it could all be fake. And what I like to take from that is, hey, we know nothing about really anything. So I try to not take anything for granted. I try to not make assumptions. So I talked a little bit about this in the episode on metal and skepticism. If you listened to that episode of Uncut Ramblings, you would have heard me talk about this already. But discovering metal music was one of the things that initially gave me that realization. Like, metal is loud and painful and horrible. That was an assumption that I had that seemed completely reasonable. And it seemed like there wasn't going to be much that could change that assumption for me. And then I went and discovered metal, and I was like, okay, everything I assumed about this was wrong. So, I think the theory that everything is a simulation can challenge our assumptions in a similar way and make us realize that we know a lot less than we think. If we can't even trust our own senses, then really the only thing I think we can fairly safely assume is I think therefore I am. I think that's from Descartes. The idea that there's probably something somewhere, some sort of consciousness experiencing some of this in some way. We have no idea if it's simulated or not. We don't know anything of the sort, but presumably we can assume that somewhere we are consciousnesses in some way, shape, or form. That is pretty much all we can deduce. I don't think there's much reason to go any further than that. And I have heard that people have gone further than that, but so far I haven't heard any of the evidence. If you know some of the evidence, feel free to leave it in the comments. If you have any opinion on this, of course, please feel free to leave it in the comments. Let me know. Or chat with me on Discord. I am happy to chat on Discord if you join my Discord server. Happy to talk to people about this, and I'm hoping some peeps on the Discord server will have thoughts about this. Anyway, continuing. I want to also talk about the fact that this theory is, in my opinion, not really useful for its own sake. Again, as I have said before, for reasons I've expressed previously in this episode, I don't really think it changes anything whether we are living in a simulation or not, because we can't do anything about it, and we might as well just go on with our lives. And I think it is really useful instead to talk about uncertainty. To talk about, hey, we don't really know anything, so let's just keep that in mind and not make assumptions about stuff. And that is an important consequence, I think, and the simulation theory can really help get that point across. Because if people go, well, I can see this with my own eyes, you could just say, your eyes could be simulated right now, and that could be sort of an example to show people that you don't really necessarily know if you've seen the truth, if that makes sense. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an explanation as extreme as we are living in a simulation. It could just be, you were mistaken, there's the placebo effect, there's confirmation bias, there are all sorts of reasons that you could have thought you saw something, yes, and it turned out to be not true. So those are a couple of consequences, I think, of the theory that we are living in a simulation. And finally, I want to talk about a caveat to this, which is that obviously, if we are living in a simulation, then pretty much none of our current knowledge applies, and for reasons I have discussed previously, since I think it is fairly impractical to behave as though we are living in a simulation, or to, overthink it, because there's nothing we can do about it, I think it is better to assume that at least some of what we can perceive is to some extent accurate. It is fairly useful to assume that what we are experiencing is happening, because there's nothing we can do about it if it isn't. So you can go around saying, if what I am experiencing from my senses is accurate, then there's a bird in that tree. You could go around saying that if you want, and it could be funny for a couple of minutes, but I suspect you'd get bored of it really quickly. And so I recommend that, unless you are a philosopher who is dealing with this consistently and heavily, you stay away from that sort of thing, and just assume that unless you are on drugs or something, you are actually experiencing what you think you are experiencing. Because it is impractical to say if what I am experiencing with my senses is correct every 5 minutes. So that is a little bit of a caveat to the theory. Oh dear, I need to put some blocks away. I'm running out of space in my inventory. You know what would be useful right about now, and what I have easy access to now? A shulker box. I should make a shulker box. That would be useful. Gonna drop off some of this stone. This is an andesite chest. That's a diorite chest. Here's a stone chest. Good. Alright, let's make a shulker box to take care of this. I've put my shulker shells in this chest over here. I've added a couple of chests here for the end dimension. Here are some shulker shells. Good. Let's make a shulker box. So, yes, I think it is important to keep that in mind. Just not constantly keep it as a caveat to theories about knowledge or anything. So, yeah, we kind of need to discount the theory that we live in a simulation, even though it seems fairly plausible, is what I'm saying here, because it is impractical to consider at all times. And with that, I suppose I have said all I want to say on the matter. I've gone through this little list of things I want to talk about that I have next to me, and so I think I will leave you there, dear listeners, but I hope you have appreciated hearing my thoughts on this wacky topic, this weird, wonderful theory that has been suggested by people. Hope you have enjoyed it and enjoyed having this little foray into this philosophical area with me. And I hope you are having a great day, and I hope the rest of your day will be great. And I hope you'll come back and listen to me ramble about some more stuff, and come back to my channel next week when I upload another video. Sorry this one's a bit late, by the way. I will see you on Wednesday for a live stream or on Saturday for another video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!